Welcome back to the science of turning back time. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and controversial idea that much of what shortens our health span may be driven by something called the toxic bile paradigm. And today, my guest is Dr. Garrett Smith, who has explored almost every major health approach out there, from carnivore to homeopathy, and has come out on the other side with a unique way of understanding why certain things help, why others cause harm, and how we can extend not just our lifespan, but our health span. So, Garrett, I'd love to start with your personal story. You were lifting weights at the age of 11 and experimenting with nutrition very early on. But looking back, how do you think those early experiments have shaped your understanding of what really builds long-term health?
Well, I do. I mean, that was always kind of the first thing I saw. I remember my dad was an athlete. He was the city racquetball champion the year I was born. So there was always, like, I've always known that physical activity is very important for health, movement. Whatever people want to do, humans are just designed to move. So physical activity, as we all get into it, I was very interested. I researched a bunch and I read books and I was into bodybuilding like so many kids are. And then that led, of course, once you're into fitness, that leads into nutrition. And then nutrition, I started noticing, like, when I was maybe 15, I drank a glass of milk, and before the glass of milk was half gone, I could feel the phlegm starting in my sinuses. And so, like, my sinuses have always been a big indicator for me of whether things are good for me or not. And then that led into, I got into supplements and stuff like that, and I was trying to eat healthy. And I was into aspartame. I was into Equal back when it was, I mean, we're talking like I was 18 years old. So this is like 30 years ago. So Equal, aspartame, NutraSweet was real popular. And I thought it was going to be healthy. I was doing the skim milk with like shredded wheat and putting Equal on it. And I was making fake sodas with lemon juice and Equal and club soda. And I couldn't figure out why I was getting these short migraine headaches. Family took a trip to Canada. There was a supplement store that had one of those free magazines out in front, and I read it and it says Toxic Sweetener is an article title. And I start reading it and it goes, this could cause headaches. And I went, maybe that's why I've been getting these weird headaches. So, I mean, I was 18. So to get headaches at that age is not normal. And then, so I took that out of my diet, and then all of a sudden the headaches disappeared. So I started getting into the idea of, like, I started realizing that foods and or, compounds could make people sick, even though we were told that they are good for us. So that was that was kind of the early development that led into, I went to college. I wasn't sure of what I wanted to do afterwards. I got a degree in physiology and a minor in nutrition. And then it just so happened later, after working in like physical therapy and a supplement store, I found out about naturopathic medical school. There was one 2 hours north of me in Phoenix. And so I moved there, learned all that stuff, kept experimenting, kept observing, kept watching patterns, and just put together one of the ideas that, it's a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So there's tons of health approaches out there that have a couple things right or several things right, but they have a lot of other things wrong. And so what my goal always was, like, let's just take the best from any of these things that are true and incorporate them and put them together, because we don't have to be like locked into one dogma. That doesn't work for every single person. There's nothing that works for every single person. So we work on that, and we are okay with that. And that's, I give people a lot of freedom in my work to figure out what's best for them within a framework. So we have a framework, and then we're helping them to figure out what's best for them within that. So that's kind of how we got here. The idea of, we need certain things for our body to run correctly. And then also having toxic things in our body that make it run incorrectly, or disease states. We want the nutrients that we need, which is fewer than we think. And we don't want the toxins that make our system run poorly. And in theory, if we do those two things, then the body starts fixing itself. So that's the basics.
Absolutely. So, and on a personal journey, I think you've also worked through a lot of your own health challenges, very much in this way. And using that body awareness that I think you teach people now as well, is learning how to learn and listen for themselves what is working and what isn't working.
That's critically important. I mean, this is something, like, I started running into stuff in in my own experience where people would say, well, if you take this supplement or if you take this medication, it does this for people. Like they're just basically like they're saying it does this for everybody. And I'd take it and I go, well, that either nothing happened or I didn't feel good on it. As an example, a silly example from my history, when there's a lot of people out there in the health world. I'm sure you've run into them. You may even be one who, if something's good, more is better. So if they learn something in the health world that they believe is good, they tend to overdo it. There's so many of these people. I'm one of them. So, and I run into a lot of them. I help fix a lot of them. And I have to tell a lot of them, including myself sometimes, don't push too hard. Like you can overdo anything too. So we're trying to figure out what works. I was working in the supplement store and they had a discount section, like the things they were closing out, big discounts. And so I had my, the discount plus my employee discount. And so I would just raid the sale shelf and I would look in the books that we had in the store and I would research them and I go, oh, this is good for this. And maybe I had that issue or maybe I didn't want to have that issue. So I'd start taking things. And the funny thing is everything we put in our body has to be processed or quote unquote detoxed, or at least deemed okay by the liver and the kidneys to stay in the system. So I was taking like 50 pills a day at one point from all of these supplements. And I'm like 19, 20 years old. I don't know anything. I mean, I knew more than most, but I was working in a supplement store and people liked the advice I gave. But anyway, my girlfriend at the time said something very, very intelligent, very wise. And she said, do you know that your body has to process all those things? And that hit me like a truck. I was like, oh, wait, it does. Like I'm putting in 50 pills worth of concentrated things. And then she said, do you even feel better on all that stuff? And that was another truck hitting me. And I went, wait, I need to evaluate this. And I thought about it. And I thought, you know what? I'm not feeling amazing from all of this. I should, if I'm taking all these pills and they're working the way they should, I should feel utterly amazing, like Superman. And I didn't. So I stopped taking them all the next day. And over the next couple days, I started going, I think I feel better without all these things. So again, like overdoing things versus we can overdo things. There's the things that most people, what they need to do for their health. The biggest thing that most people avoid in helping their own health is not doing things, or they refuse to do the things that they need to do. Like let's say exercise or moving your body. People just be like, I'm just not going to do it, or I don't want to, I don't like it. Or they always overdo it. I knew somebody who would say they won't do yoga, they won't do stretching because they're kind of like hyper flexible and they always overdo it. And I was just kind of like, well, why don't you just not overdo it? So most of the time people would do better removing things, taking things out of their health approaches rather than adding things. Everybody's always happy to add, like supplements. People will add supplements, people will add medications, people will add new technology. They'll add. And then they wonder why they're running out of time to do all these things. When in reality, they could just take away the things. Like I tell people, a toxin that you never put in your body doesn't have to be detoxed. It doesn't require nutrients to protect you from it. It doesn't require nutrients to detox you from it. It doesn't require anything. So isn't it better? The first step of all of this should be, I have a saying called, you want to stop intoxing before you start trying to detox.
Yes.
Right? Why are we trying to, like, and as an example, a classic example, somebody has mercury amalgam fillings in their mouth. Those are putting mercury into their system every time they chew, every time they drink something hot, basically all day long. And the dentist will tell you they're not. And you can go and watch videos on the internet of a 40-year-old amalgam filling that they rub with an eraser and it starts off-gassing. They have it in a black light. You can see the off-gassing in the black light. So a 40-year-old filling, dentistry tells you that they're not off-gassing anymore. Oh, an eraser, which would be like let's say you're chewing nuts. That would easily be as hard as an eraser rubbing on the mercury. So if somebody had mercury fillings and they go, well, I'm going to start a mercury detox. Really? So they have years or decades of mercury stuck in their tissues, waiting to come out. Like their body wants to get rid of it. And then they go and they start taking mercury detox stuff, whether it's herbs or amino acids or chelators or whatever. they take this stuff. So they've already got mercury coming into their body at least 3 times a day when they eat or drink hot liquids. Then they start taking things that are pulling the mercury out of their tissues. So this creates something I call a detox loop, which is where they have mercury coming into their blood, and then they're pulling mercury out of their tissues into their blood. So now they have extra mercury in their blood, and they wonder why they feel bad when they try to detox mercury, because they're like, I got to get this out of me. Well, the biggest way to get it out of you would be to take out the fillings first, right? We want to stop the intox. And then the funny thing is people's bodies will actually start detoxing it automatically. Their body was working on detoxing it all the time, but it couldn't because it had too much coming in. And the body didn't want to have it coming in and taking it out at the same time. The body's intelligent. The body says, well, if we just got to put it away for now, we can't get rid of it because we got too much coming in. And trying to take it out at the same time would be bad for us. Then the body says, we'll just store it, accumulate it, as they say. So this is a big thing. It's almost an example people usually understand pretty well. It would be like cigarette smokers, right? While they're smoking, oftentimes they don't cough that much. They don't hack that much. But once they quit, they start coughing up phlegm, and they've got stuff coming out of them, and they got stuff coming out of their skin. Like, it's just, they smell like they smell already with the cigarettes, but most people understand that it's when people quit smoking that the body starts finally being able to reject it, and it does it automatically. So the best key to detoxing is always to stop putting the poison in, because then the body can do what it wants to do the whole time it just couldn't do before. So these are like concepts that I go by on these things.
And you've coined the term the toxic bile paradigm.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, we have, if people want to get more information after I talk about it, my live stream number 71 on my YouTube channel, which is just Nutrition Detective, that's where we can go over the basics. So toxic bile paradigm is an idea of, okay, so your liver is your main detox organ. The liver does 3 main things. It processes toxins. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I'm going in the wrong order. It filters the blood. And people will say, the liver's not a filter. And you say, well, a filter is something that by definition takes stuff out of something else. That's what a filter does. So the liver takes toxins out of your blood for processing. So the liver is by definition a filter. The kidneys are a filter too. Liver's a filter, first of all. The liver filters out those toxins, and then it puts them through toxin processing steps. I call this the sewage processing plant. And then the third thing that the liver does is, if it cannot deal with the amount of toxins coming in fast enough, it will store or accumulate toxins in it. There are people out there who claim that the liver doesn't store things, and I can take 2 seconds and show them that it absolutely accumulates toxicity. An idea that the liver accumulates toxicity would be fatty liver. Fatty liver is an accumulation of fat-soluble toxins that the liver is creating fat, literally to store more fat-soluble toxins in it. So those are the 3 main things the liver does. So by definition, the liver then gets rid of its toxicity, right? So if you had a sewage processing plant, the sewage processing plant doesn't just make all the toxins poof disappear. That's what people often think the liver does. The liver detoxes, and then they think the toxins the liver turns them into water and air and whatever. No, it doesn't. It has to get rid of, the sewage processing plant processes things, but then it's got waste. Just like a nuclear power plant has nuclear waste. Sewage processing plant has sewage waste. So the liver has waste. Where does the liver get rid of this? Into the bile. That is how that I call the bile the liver's poop. So the liver, but then by definition, since the liver is your detox organ, the bile is the most toxic substance in your entire body, the most toxic fluid in your entire body. So that goes into your guts through the bile ducts. This bile, as we get more toxic, whether that's from taking in toxicity, from not getting rid of it, or from actually your toxic bile as it goes down into your intestines, is a huge part of what changes your gut biome. So when people are talking about your gut biome being key to health, well, you're applying bile, which could be very toxic, to that biome every day. That changes your gut biome. It's in the research. And then your gut biome, if it gets worse, actually makes the bile more toxic by turning it into toxic secondary bile acids and even tertiary bile acids. So it's this vicious cycle. And then, so we have that bile coming into the gut. This bile, over time, Well, actually, let me get into the recycling. So the bile goes into your gut, and then you actually, so people often have a mistake of thinking that like our skin will only absorb good things, or that our gut will only absorb good things. No, your skin absorbs stuff. Your gut absorbs stuff, better or worse. You put bad things in your gut, you're going to absorb bad things. It's like you are what you eat, right? So you got bile going into your gut. On a standard American diet, people, it's in the literature, people reabsorb 95% of that bile. 5% gets excreted in the poop. So you're making this toxic fluid, it's going into your guts. 95% of it normally gets reabsorbed because there's not enough binders or fiber in your diet, and it goes right back to the liver. So the liver just dumped its waste, it came right back to the liver. Liver's got to process it again and dump it again. So we have this loop of reabsorbing, and it can become more toxic along the way from the gut biome changing it. Okay, so now that toxic bile over time, as it gets more toxic, more concentrated in toxicity, it then starts eating holes in things. It will, and I have research on all these things, it will eat holes in the very liver cells that make bile, that make it. Imagine like a pregnant animal where the fetus was like dissolving holes in the pregnant mother's belly. Like that's what we're talking about here. So that's, I mean, I'm talking about the cells being dissolved, right? So then it can break down the bile ducts, the little bile ducts, like think capillaries of blood, but think of the liver has little tiny bile ducts. Well, it can break through those. The big bile ducts, it can eat holes through that. It goes into your gut. It can eat holes through your gut, leaky gut. Most people never have an idea of what causes leaky gut. They're just like, oh, it just happens. No, you have literally bile that is eating holes in your gut. Your leaky gut is a bile toxicity problem. The other thing that happens is if the bile goes back up into your stomach, it can eat holes there. What do we call those? Ulcers. Your stomach, actually, I have the research showing your stomach can directly absorb bile into your bloodstream. So all of these leaks, then this most toxic fluid in your body, bile, gets into your bloodstream. And that is where it starts wreaking havoc. It's like a self-poisoning. And that's basically the basis of it. So what are we trying to do? What do we do to counter this? The body can heal if we stop attacking it or if we stop poisoning it. So what do? We first try to minimize or reduce or avoid putting toxins into the system. So then the detox system of the body can do what it's designed to do. Number 2 is we try to facilitate the removal of stored toxins. The body absolutely stores toxins. We store it in the body fat. We store it in the liver. The kidneys store toxic metals. The bones store toxic metals. Like our bodies are amazingly designed well to store toxins. It's not that it wants to, it's that we have too much coming in. And it's a defense mechanism. And then number 3 is we want to restore the nutrient status, specific nutrient status of the body so it can protect itself from toxins and so it can detox toxins. That's the gist of it. And then as we do those things, even if we did those 3 things, if people just did those 3 things correctly, if I never came up with the concept of toxic bile paradigm, they would still be fixing the problem. So whether or not people understand toxic bile paradigm completely, if you just minimize or avoid or reduce toxins, you facilitate the removal of stored toxins via things like soluble fiber, charcoal, zeolite, stuff like that, then you can get rid of them through the gut. And then 3 is you get the nutrient statuses right, and you're not taking in things that we're told are nutrients that are actually toxic, like vitamin A, copper, examples. So then the body fixes itself. But that's the basics of toxic bile paradigm. And then we do dump bile. The liver makes bile and dumps it, especially if you have a gallbladder. Why would the gallbladder go bad? The literal organ that's made to hold bile. Bile can become so toxic that it actually breaks down the organ made to hold it, that marinates in it all day. So anyway, bile dumping, when people either the liver dumps bile or the gallbladder dumps bile, and then you leak it into your system, you feel bad. And then as your liver clears that out, hopefully, you then feel better. And then you kind of go, why did that happen? Well, things that can cause bile dumping, very simply, there's a list. They don't always cause the same, the intensity of these things is different. But I mean, eating food will cause bile dumps. Eating fat will cause bile dumps. Eating excessive amounts of fiber can cause bile dumps. Stress, like when a lot of people, they get stressed and they wonder why they feel so bad. They're like, it doesn't make sense. I got a little stressed, but why do I feel terrible for days? That's bile dumping. You dumped bile, you poisoned yourself, and it's still floating around your system waiting to be cleared out by your liver for days. The sun, people out there who are really toxic, they don't tolerate sun on their skin well. They get burned very easily. They don't tolerate it in their eyes well. Their eyes are very sensitive to sun. What's the last one? I had one more. Heat, if I didn't say that already. Really toxic people, bile will tend to be dumped in hot conditions. And this is why a lot of people, when they get too hot outside, they just don't like being outside in the heat because it makes them feel bad. Or they go to a sauna or a hot tub and they get out of it and they're just wrecked and they're tired and they got to go sleep and they can't handle it. These are things that, heat tends to speed things up in the body. We're warm-blooded. You give us warmth, it speeds things up. So that's just some ideas that's toxic bile paradigm in a nutshell. And a lot of people have found that when they understand these concepts, they can look into their history and what affects them, what they know has affected them negatively or positively, and they can figure out, well, that makes sense now. So I take great pride in people telling me that, wow, Dr. Smith, like everything I've had in my life makes sense now. Like why these things helped me feel better for a while, and then I got worse, or why these things always made me feel worse, or why these things always made me feel better. So that's what we do. That's the whole gist.
Can we talk a little bit about the gallbladder and women in their fees? So we kind of know that women in particular, when they hit their 40s, are more prone to issues with gallbladder. What's going on there?
Well, yes, there's the idea, the 4 or even 5 F's of gallbladder issues, where there's overweight, female, 40 or more, and fertile. So still fertile. Well, one of the things that I believe, women in general detox slower than men. It's just the way it is. I didn't make the rules. I didn't design it. Women are more easily poisoned than men. Women also tend to store toxins more easily than men. Where do we see this? Well, women just carry more body fat as a general rule than men, and women are it's easier for women to make body fat, it seems. So they can store more. Why do they do that? Well, they're supposed to get pregnant, and you don't want all those toxins floating around with the baby if you can avoid it. So there's that. Women often these days are just, okay, I'm not a super low fat promoter in the diet. However, I do think that I'm not against added sugars, and I'm against added fats generally. Most people are adding way too much sugar and or way too much fat to their diet. And I do not believe women do as well with more fat in their diet as men do. So we've just got these issues, and gallbladder and bile's there to help. It helps to digest fats or to break down fats. But these combinations, and then pregnancy. So the fertile part of those F's, when women go through the major hormonal shifts of a normal woman's life, they've got puberty, they've got pregnancy, they've got menopause. When women go through these changes, it's like they're making all these, so menopause is not making a lot of hormones, but puberty, menses, starting menses, and then pregnancy, there's huge hormonal shifts. One of the biggest ones in pregnancy, right, is they're making all these hormones to maintain the pregnancy. So the liver has to process. Some of the hardest things for the liver to process are our own hormones. So when women have these hormonal surges, like let's say their period, their menses or pregnancy, and they start dumping all these hormones into their system, if their liver can't keep up, then everything else falls behind. And so they can't keep up on their toxicity. Women have the benefit of actually bleeding, which is a form of detox. The monthly bleeding is actually, this is why women in general have like less heart disease than men until they hit menopause. And then once women hit menopause, their heart disease catches up to men very, very quickly. So menstruation is actually a detox of sorts. So we have these things that just, it makes it tougher. Women tend to not be as physically active as a general rule as many men. So they just don't have as many of these things moving detox. And then we combine it with, I believe, the societal, the intentional poisoning of women via cosmetics, via all their scents, and via all these things that they purposely sell to women, and women are the main consumers out there. They just push all these things, and they are literally poisoning people because they think something smells good, or they sell them on a new idea about this does this. And the main people, if we were to believe that people out there were trying to create situations of infertility and other things of this nature, damaging the next generation, who would they go after the most? Women are the final stop on making new people. So, and women, a newborn baby is, I use this term, marinating in whatever his mother is made of for 9 months. So the baby is made of, for better or worse, whatever the mom and the dad were made of or weren't made of. So if they're nutrient deficient, baby's nutrient deficient. If they're toxic, baby's toxic. The placenta is actually, in all of my research, the placenta, I mean, the placenta has many functions, but the placenta is actually a third liver during pregnancy. And that's why it should be discarded. Don't eat your placenta, please. It's full of toxicity. I could show you this in the research. The placenta is meant to be discarded. And I mean, I didn't know this. I helped my ex-wife with our 2 children to, I did the whole drying it out and encapsulating it and all that stuff. And now I look back and I go, man, I wish I knew. I wish I knew then what I knew now. But the liver, so you got the mom's liver, you got the baby's liver, and you got the placenta, which is meant to be, if it's filled up with toxins during pregnancy, it's meant to be tossed. So there's lots of stuff. But this whole gallbladder thing, I have an episode on the live stream of, I don't know what number it is, but what to do if you're missing a gallbladder. If you have had your gallbladder out, what to do about it. But yeah, women in general, they have more gallbladder issues, and there's multiple reasons for it. And most of my clientele, a majority of my clientele is women. And I just have to let them know at the start, you're a little further behind the 8 ball than most of the guys. So it is what it is. And if you're already missing a gallbladder, it doesn't mean that people can't get better. It does mean that generally, so think about this. So your gallbladder is like a big bag that can hold bile. And when it's working right, it squeezes out a bunch of bile at once. It's like a reservoir that can be dumped all at once. Okay. If you don't have a gallbladder, regardless of your gender, what happens instead of the gallbladder accumulating your bile so it can dump it all at once is the liver just kind of makes a trickle of bile all day. So the liver's normally making a trickle of bile. It's going into the gallbladder and it's holding it. If you don't have a gallbladder, the trickle's just going into your gut. Now, what that means is generally that if you don't have a gallbladder, eating lower fat meals is going to be better. Spreading out your meals more, or having smaller meals because you can't dump as much bile at once, smaller meals would be better. And then if you're doing supplements like, let's say, binders to bind bile, which we use a lot of, then you want to spread those out too in general. So instead of like doing a big dose of charcoal once a day, they might have a water bottle of charcoal water and sip it through the day, as opposed. So you're trying to match the bile trickle instead of matching the bile dump. Does that make sense?
Yep, makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I don't know the exact number, but I read a study recently that said women are exposed to something, I can't remember the exact number, like 120 chemicals before they even leave home in the morning. And it's from, your shower gel, your shampoo, then your body lotion, then your deodorant, then your makeup, then household products that you're cleaning with. And the list goes on and on and on. The numbers were astounding. And if you think, what we're being exposed to now, as opposed to maybe 100 years ago or 200 years ago, this has to have a huge impact on health.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like for let's say women out there who have hormonal issues or, other health issues, and they're they wake up each morning and they start using all these products and they wonder why they're sick. Well, when I was talking about the primary thing to get better is taking stuff out or even replacing things with better things. I mean, well, we have men and women, but especially women. They're like, well, what do you expect me to do? I need to look good. I need to smell good. I need to do all this. And I go, I don't make the rules. You can choose to do whatever you want to do. If I'm telling you, as you're saying, if you're exposing yourself to 120 chemicals before you leave your house and you don't feel good, maybe the 120 chemicals is the problem. And it doesn't matter whether you like to do it or not, or whether you feel you have to do it or not. That's your root cause of part of your health issues. You take those out, you'd probably feel better. You don't have to do it, but don't kill the messenger. I'm just here trying to help you. So even with I have a 17-year-old daughter and I'm trying to teach her about this stuff and say, I am blessed enough that I'm in position where I'm going to be making, we're working on a tooth powder, like a non-toxic way to brush your teeth. We're working on potentially having multiple types of soap coming out. We may eventually have a deodorant. So we're working on, because I say these things and people go, well, what should I buy? Well, I go, okay, well, I'm going to make it because we already make some of the cleanest supplements out there. Why not make some basic stuff for people to have that's not toxic and that's actually potentially healing? So but the biggest thing, folks, is if it has a strong smell, whether you like it or not, it's not good for you. Smells are aldehydes, smells are all sorts of chemicals that just because you've kind of trained yourself to like it or you believe you like it, it doesn't mean it's good for you. I always have a joke about this, which is crackheads love crack. It doesn't mean it's good for them. So just because, people get addicted to toxic drugs all the time, does that mean it's good for them? Just because you're addicted to a scent, people get addicted to things that are toxic.
Yeah, it's incredible. And they now sell these scents that you can put in that your laundry will smell that way for a whole week. They're like, the whole week it's going to smell this good. And you're thinking, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was at a hotel for one of my daughter's dance competitions, and in the lobby, they spray those scents in the lobby. So they think you're going to remember the hotel because you associate it with a certain scent. And I was just going, I want to spend as little time here as possible. As what we see in our work is as we explain to people what is toxic and what isn't, as they do the program, as they work the diet, as they're doing the detox stuff, over time, they often lose tastes for foods that they used to like. They actually start to reject it. And they go, I can't believe I used to like that. They try it again. And I don't stop them from doing that. They try it again. They're at a family's house or it's a holiday or whatever, or whenever they choose to do it, they try it and they go, why did I like that? I don't like that anymore. And they start noticing that as they get really better, let's say they walk through that, the laundry detergent center or aisle of the supermarket that used to give them a headache. Well, they walk through there, they don't get a headache, but they definitely hear the alarm bells ringing, or when they go into other scented places, their body just goes, get out of here. This is not good for you. But maybe they used to love that scent, and then they start going, wait, this is wrong. So as we get more toxic, we become less able to recognize toxins, and we actually often tend to want more toxins. As we get less toxic, we tend to start recognizing toxins better, and our body actually literally tells us to avoid it. So it's cool. We're letting the body dictate, this stuff, but people have to realize that when they say, well, I love my coffee, and we go, well, yes, crackheads love crack. That doesn't mean it's good for them. You're on a stimulant. People get addicted to stimulants all the time. That's normal to be addicted to a stimulant. That's what they do. So anyway, yeah, it's fun stuff.
How long have you been in practice?
Well, I graduated naturopathic medical school in 2006 now. So basically 19 years. And I was a personal trainer for 12 years before that, dealing with people. So it's over 30 years that I've been dealing directly with people. Yeah.
So I'm curious whether you've noticed an increase in people coming in with like multiple chemical sensitivity over time? Are you seeing more and more of that?
Well, okay, it all depends on if people are recognizing it or not, right? Because most of the MDs are not going to tell people that they have multiple chemical sensitivity. We have, I mean, okay, how do I put this? I can't say that I notice an increase in it for a very specific reason. Because of my approach and what I teach, and I'm teaching people, like, let's say we have somebody who's chemically sensitive or just what I call a sensitive person. If they come to me and they're like, Doc, I know I'm deficient in, you saw my labs, you saw my hair test, you saw my blood test, you say I'm deficient in zinc. And I'm telling them, I want you to try some zinc. And they try and they go, I can't take it. I don't feel good when I take it. Then we go, okay, you don't take it. So the fact that I get people who tell me that their other practitioners said, you need to take this supplement for your PCOS. And they try taking it and they go, this makes me feel terrible. I don't want to take it. And then they actually I've had multiple people tell me this. Their practitioner said, well, if you can't take this stuff, then I can't work with you. And I'm my flabbergasted. Like, I'm just like, somebody would actually do that instead of just saying, okay, well, that's not working. Let's try other things, or let's just, the really sensitive people have to start often with diet, because even the diet could push their detox too hard and they may not feel good. But the supplements at the start are way overboard for them. It stirs up too much stuff in their system. So I can't say that we get more chemically sensitive people or more EMF sensitive people, because we get those people all the time. Like, I get some of the people who, they've failed with all these other practitioners, even some of these environmental medicine practitioners and other things, because they use a lot of toxic supplements themselves that I would never touch. And so we get these people on a regular basis. So I'm saying, if you're out there and you're chemically sensitive, or you're EMF sensitive or whatever, I used to be EMF sensitive. It was practically driving me a little nuts at the time. And I fixed my vitamin A toxicity. I fixed my iron overload. I fixed my copper toxicity. And then the EMF sensitivity went away. So it's regular for us to deal with the most sensitive of the most sensitive. So I can't say that we see any more, because that's like the type we often attract. So do I think it's going up? Wait, do I think it's going up? Yes. Absolutely. Do I think it's going up? Yes. And if people don't recognize it, then they just go to their MDs and they're just stuck in the loop of, they either get a drug for it, or they're told it's all in their head, or then these things aren't poisonous. The FDA says they're okay. And you go.
I know you're known for your work on vitamin A toxicity. This one is a little interesting and controversial. I'm really curious to hear your views on this.
Well, that's a huge jar to open up. But yeah, so as an example, when we're talking about leaky gut, as an example, or we're talking about toxic bile. So the body does, you can go in the research and find that the liver dumps vitamin A into the bile. Why would it be getting rid of something that it likes so much, right? But you have that, and I talked about how the bile, the toxic, as it gets toxic enough, it will eat holes basically everywhere it touches over time, as it's exposed over and over. Just like, think of like picking a scab over and over. It can actually get worse. So the last detox product. So as vitamin A goes through let's start with this. You have a detox pathway in your liver for alcohol, for ethanol. So it starts as ethanol. It goes through an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase. We'll just call it AD. It becomes acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is what causes you the symptoms from drinking, like a hangover, or that would kill you if you had alcohol poisoning. So then acetaldehyde goes through ALDH, also known as aldehyde dehydrogenase. This is one of the most important detox enzymes in the body, in my opinion. And then it goes through ALDH, and then it becomes acetic acid. Okay. Why is this detox pathway of alcohol important? Well, ethanol, OL. Well, what is what we call the main form of vitamin A called? Well, it's retinol, OL. It's an alcohol. So first of all, we're trying to say that an alcohol compound is an essential vitamin needed by the body. And we start to go, well, why isn't ethanol a vitamin? Why is retinol a vitamin? Why isn't ethanol not a vitamin? Then we start seeing that retinol goes through the exact same detox pathway as ethanol does. So one's a known poison. The other is somehow essential to our sight. So retinol goes through ADH, it turns into retinaldehyde. Anybody in health knows that aldehydes are not good for us. So there's actually literally a form of vitamin A that is an aldehyde and an alcohol. And then retinaldehyde goes through ALDH and it becomes retinoic acid. Okay, so now we're on to retinoic acid. So retinoic acid is a detox product of vitamin A. So retinoic acid is sold to people by the pharmaceutical companies as Accutane, 13-cis-retinoic acid, Atra or all-trans retinoic acid, which is sold to us as Retin-A or tretinoin. Accutane is isotretinoin. And then there's another one called 9-cis-retinoic acid, which is mainly just used as a form of chemotherapy. Now, your body makes all three of those from the vitamin A you eat. Chemists cannot tell the difference between these compounds in your body, whether it came from a pharmaceutical or whether it came from what you ate, vitamin A in your foods. So retinoic acid. Let's go into how this would contribute to toxic bile paradigm and how it could eat holes everywhere it goes. Retinoic acid is used in cosmetic and aesthetic medicine as what's called a yellow peel or a chemical peel. Yellow because vitamin A is generally yellow. So they put it on your face, and what it does is it's basically going to dissolve the upper layers of cells, so that then your body makes new cells underneath it and you get that kind of baby butt, soft, smooth skin look. But it got you there by dissolving the upper layers of cells. So now imagine your liver, which does accumulate vitamin A over time. It can accumulate, I think the biggest number we found in the research after figuring out, they said how much they found per cubic centimeter or whatever of liver tissue. It came out to somebody had, if they didn't eat any more liver, or if they didn't eat more vitamin A in their diet, they had 10 years of vitamin A, daily vitamin A stored in their liver. 10 years worth of the RDA of vitamin A in their liver. That's not the body doesn't do that as like a backup. It's storing a toxin. So anyway, the liver gets rid of vitamin A into the bile. Retinoic acid in the bile means you literally have a chemical peel that dissolves cells going into your intestines, going on your bile ducts, going on your gut, and causing, what else could cause leaky gut other than something that literally dissolves cells? See, so we start getting into that, and then there's other things. I've accumulated research showing that there's quite a few studies where they found, like, let's say a child who was born with technically zero vitamin A in their liver, and they were perfectly healthy. I've found research on large populations down in South America or Latin America where they say, well, they were all deficient. Like, it's normal for these countries to be deficient, but because we haven't found any of the vitamin A related problems in them, it hasn't been a priority to deal with. So they're saying, I've accumulated these papers where they say, well, we find all this vitamin A deficiency and we don't find vitamin A related problems. So we start looking at it and we look at the detox of it through a toxicity pathway related to ethanol. We look at what retinoic acid does in the system. We look at, this, what was the last thing? Oh, we look at, there's plenty of research showing that vitamin A deficiency can completely exist and no one has any problems. And now we've have multiple people who have gotten their serum retinol, their blood vitamin A level, down to the equivalent of 0, and they have no vitamin A deficiency problems. So we put all those things together, and then we see regularly in our program where people start taking out, okay, so you cannot have a 0 vitamin A diet with whole foods. It doesn't exist. Nobody ever said we had to do that. What we have to do, it's simple math, right? If you wanted your bank account to grow, you have to put more money in on a regular basis than you take out. Your body is always trying to detox vitamin A and other things. So what do we need to do? It's like that first principle we have. We need to minimize or reduce or eliminate toxin intake. So if we simply reduce or minimize the vitamin A intake to as low as possible is great, but as lower than the amount we're able to get rid of, then we're basically reducing our vitamin A savings account, which we don't want, in our liver over time. So it's just math. Now we can't get hard numbers on that. analyzing your bile and analyzing your poop on a daily basis to know how much you're taking. So we just really have to look at symptoms. And we do measure serum retinol. We do measure blood vitamin A over time. And over time, we see it eventually come down. But it can stay steady for years while people are on a very close to zero vitamin A diet, which means they have tons of vitamin A stored in their system. And then as it really starts dropping, that's when we see their most chronic health issues go down. Like the ones that were stubborn and sticking around, their health issues, once we finally see their vitamin A, if it stays steady for years, which is in the literature, it's in the scientific literature, once it starts dropping, then their really chronic health issues start going away. So it's just observations and patterns and all that stuff. But yes, it's hard to accept. I understand that.
Are there any particular conditions where, if people do start paying attention to thinking about this kind of toxic bile, where they're going to feel the impact on this? I mean, this podcast is really about aging and healthy aging. We're talking about slowing down, preventing metabolic decline, neurodegeneration, that sort of things, the kind of things that's going to hit us in our 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond. So how does this relate or tie into health span?
Well, I've one of the things I think that is the biggest mistake made in kind of like longevity medicine is that they look at cell studies way too much. Cell studies, in my opinion, are 99% garbage. Cell studies, often what we found, I've actually made a name for it, the duration paradox, is an idea where one of the ideas of it, there's multiple ideas to it, but one of the ideas is that oftentimes the very things that happen in cell studies, the exact opposite happens in actual whole people or whole animals. And we see this in the literature all the time. So there's that issue. But my biggest concern, as I tell people, is, or my main goal, let me put it that way. I'm after, it's not about the number of years in your life, it's the quality in your years, which may not be more years, right? Because we have plenty of people out there who are sick and they're keeping them alive for 5, 10, 20 years longer. And they're just, sitting in chairs and watching TV as their quality of life goes down, and they keep having, organ system after organ system failing. And that's not what anybody wants. I mean, do some people still want to live through that? Of course, but we're after quality of life. So my goal is always to help people's quality of life improve, which in theory should help them live longer. However, I would much rather only live to 60 years old and have an amazing quality of life than live to 100 and have the last 50 years of my life be just broken and suffering and having people take care of me and all that stuff. So I always emphasize that I'm about quality of life first. People will say, oh, you could get hit, you could do all this health stuff and get hit by a bus. And I go, okay, then I had a good quality of life until then. And if I get hit by a bus, there's two things that happen to people who go through, usually there's two main things that happen to people when they go through big trauma. If they're healthy, they make it through and they seem to do okay. They do all right. And then they're still going to have a quality of life after that. And then there's the people who are sick, where either they just croak because they don't have enough health to make it through, or that starts the decline to the end. So I would much rather be healthy and recover from that thing, or just go. The other thing that happens with really healthy people is when they go, they just go. There's not the long decline. So I'm after those things for me personally. Longevity wise, I just don't worry about I'm not sitting there trying to just live longer just to live longer. But yes, these things, we do see them improve. I mean, we have people who tell us that they were basically bedbound and now they're in the best health of their life 3 years later. Quality of life is, again, what we're after. Yeah. And I mean, some people have decided that eating the foods they want to eat is their quality of life. So even though, like as an example, I had a woman come in back when I used to do laser therapy for pain. She came in, both of her knees were in terrible shape, arthritic, pain all day. We're doing laser on them. And I start talking to her about nightshade vegetables. Nightshades, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplant, tobacco, the big push these days, right? And then there's goji berries are a superfood that are also a nightshade. Ashwagandha's a nightshade. These things are all eventually quite inflammatory. And I told this lady about the nightshades. And she said, I would rather keep my tomatoes and keep my arthritis than get rid of my tomatoes and get rid of my arthritis. I said, okay, that's your call. So some people are so stuck on, they think that eating the foods they like to eat is their quality of life while they're suffering from it, whether they realize it or not. And I'm not gonna say that that's better or worse. Like, I mean, I don't really want to pay for their healthcare costs as they get older and fall apart slowly, but people are going to make their decisions. And so, if people want to eat what they want to eat and suffer, okay. If people say, I would much rather, have some restrictions on what I eat so that I can have a higher quality of life and be more active and see my grandkids and great grandkids and do all that stuff, then just eat food. And then the funny thing is, like I told you, a lot of times as people get less toxic, they realize I didn't actually, why did I like those foods? Why did I want to eat those? And they realize it was kind of an addiction and goes with toxic things. So yeah, I mean, I'm not obsessing about longevity. I'm obsessing about, quality of life. Yeah.
Brilliant health span. My last question to you: what are the 3 things you do every day for your own health? What are the 3 things you would prioritize for yourself every day?
Well, we actually there's a funny thing in the program. We have a thing called, I gave it a very technical name called the order of adding stuff. And so people will say, well, what should I do first? What should I do next? And so I made it so it's like these steps that they can go through. And actually what I tell them is, when you get to the end, go back to the beginning and check that you did these things. So for me, I guess I would say some sort of movement daily is extremely important to me. I'm not a fitness nut. I'm way more, at ease with my fitness pursuits and my exercise pursuits. But like, I'm pretty serious in the gym. I mean, I was a personal trainer for 12 years. Like that was my prior career. So that's something I really like. But what I'm telling you folks is, even if you're bedbound, or you're like, disabled, or however you want to put it, where you're like, I can't go for a walk even. Well, you can do things like, you could get a vibration plate, and just stand on it so it actually moves you. You don't have to move yourself, but you can actually move yourself, and it can help move the lymph. And then over time, as you get better, then you could start adding walking, or you could start doing other, the rebounding. You can rebound on a little trampoline where you're not jumping off of it. You just bounce on your feet stay on the thing, and you just move up and down. So movement is critical. So movement is, if I don't get my exercise in a day, I don't cry about it or anything, but I'm kind of like, man, I gotta do it tomorrow. I know that exercise for me, I tell people exercise is the best. You could call it a mood booster if you want to be positive, or you could say antidepressant if you wanted to be kind of negative about it. So when people do not move their body, I kind of expect them to be depressed. So movement is number 1. Then we get into, sleep is always huge. Fixing sleep quality. I had a period of time where I was really EMF sensitive and really toxic, and I was figuring this stuff out. I was a raging insomniac, and I started to realize how people could actually start to lose their mind from not getting enough sleep. So, obviously we have the putting out energy in movement, and then we have resting and getting energy at night. So we have all sorts of things. We help people all sorts of ways with sleep. Working on your EMF situation, getting, the right foods in you, and magnesium and potassium and all these things to help you sleep. So sleep is huge. And then finally, I tend to tell people one of the other important things during the day. We could say to eat right, but I'm going to say, especially for me and many people, and especially women, is getting the right amount and sources of protein for you. Protein's what we're made of. So you need to get enough of it. Like I tell people, the World Health Organization, who I don't look up to, but the World Health Organization literally said that adults need 50 grams of protein, total protein. It doesn't mean meat. 50 grams of total protein a day to avoid protein malnourishment. And sometimes I talk to, Western ladies, and I tell them, I want you to calculate up how much protein you're getting in a day. And we have Western women who are not getting 50 grams of protein a day. the protein malnourishment amount set by the World Health Organization for like starving third world countries. And I'm like, well, you're not going to feel good if you're technically starving for protein. So I tend to, as people figure out their body, like some people are higher protein people, they need more and they do better with more. And some people can get away with less. I'm one of the higher types. I tend to do well on a moderate to above amount of protein a day. But some people just, they're down around that fifth. Maybe they don't do well on red meat. We have people who don't do well on red meat. So I tell them you don't have to eat it, but you do need to get enough protein. So they can, one of the biggest things I see in the vegetarian and the vegan world is that they don't eat beans enough. Like that's their biggest source of protein. And a lot of them are just shoving down like literal plant foods all day, like vegetables and fruit. And then they're wondering why they're kind of wasting away. Beans would help them a lot. So anyway, so the protein, the sources of protein that work best for you. I mean, in our program, we're mainly working on red meats and poultry. So chicken and turkey and stuff like that. We're not big on fish because the fish is full of whatever's in the water, wherever they are, microplastics, fatty toxins, like rocket fuel, mercury, cadmium. I mean, I see the mercury and cadmium on hair tests. I can estimate how often people eat fish based on their hair test cadmium and mercury. So avoiding toxins is something we do. I wish I could eat fish. I wish I trusted fish. I don't at all. And then people can do things like we are actually big advocates of beans. So between red meats and poultry and beans, people can figure out, and then we count any protein in anything. So if somebody eats a cucumber, there's going to be a gram, maybe 2 grams of protein in a whole cucumber. So you can count that. So we just protein, sleep, and movement. Those are big things that if people take care of those, and they can definitely make improvements in their health by making sure they get those. Yeah.
For people who want to find out a little bit more, where can they connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. My main website where people can find just about all of our stuff is nutritiondetective.com. We're in the process of redoing the whole website. It's kind of exciting, but yeah, nutritiondetective.com. They can find my Love Your Liver program, which is under the membership link. They can find our health facilitators who work with people doing hair testing, blood testing, consultations. And with each package that people get, they get 6 months access to our we have like 3 small group meetings a week with the different facilitators, including me, where they can ask questions and get 6 months of support as part of that package. So there's that. And then there's our supplements. I do make what many people have said are the cleanest supplements around. We try to make them single ingredients so that sensitive people can know that this, like if they took zinc and they didn't feel good, they know it's the zinc. It's not the other 40 ingredients in the supplement. So we try to do it so it's one ingredient most of the time so that people can figure out what they get along with and what they don't. And then Twitter, I'm NutriDetect, NutriDetect on Twitter. You'd want to, if you're going there to learn more about me, make sure to see on my profile, my pinned thread of threads. I think it's like 25 threads that I've made of various topics. My YouTube channel, youtube.com/nutritiondetective. Or if you just search on YouTube for Nutrition Detective, you'll find me. I do a weekly live stream. It's usually about 2 hours or more long because I cover a lot of things in detail. I do Q&As there. I'll do specific topics. That's where a lot of people find me. And so those are the main places. We're working on, improving our Instagram and Facebook stuff. So if you're searching for Nutrition Detective on those, you'll find me. And yeah, that's most of it.
That's fantastic. Listen, thank you so much for your time. There's been some really interesting things in there, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing all of this with our listeners.